All right, hey everybody, it's Evan here from devascend.com, and in this video we're going to cover the Vue CLI. Now, if you remember from the previous videos that I covered, we went over the Vue basics, but now we're going to actually get into the Vue CLI, which is going to allow you to create full-fledged Vue projects using Vue technology. Now, before we get started using the Vue CLI, we're actually going to need to install Node.JS. So if you don't already have Node.js installed, you can go ahead and install the LTS right here, or you can install the current version, whatever you prefer. Just make sure that you have Node.js installed. You don't need to understand Node.js to continue with this tutorial. We just need it so that we can boot up our Vue CLI project. Now, to actually install Vue CLI, we're going to need to go to the installation page here, which I'll put a link for in the description down below. And we're just going to need to run npm install @Vue CLI. All right, so I have my command window open right now. So we're going to go ahead and paste that command right here like so. And I'm going to go ahead and press enter. Then we'll wait for this to finish installing. All right, and now you can see that we added Vue CLI successfully. And now that we have Vue installed, all we have to do is go ahead and create our project. So I'm going to type Vue space create. And we're going to have to type in a project name. I'm just going to call this project Vue tutorial. Now, when we run this command, it's going to give us a couple options here. So we can select default, Vue 2. We can go with default Vue 3 preview, or we can manually select features. Now, in this case, I'm going to click manually select features, and it's going to give us some features that we want to select for our project. So of course, we want to choose Vue version. We're going to keep Babel. I am going to unselect linter. And the way I unselect that is by just pressing space, and I'm solely doing that for the purpose of this tutorial. If you want to keep the linter on, you can, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and we're going to go ahead and choose 3.x, which is the preview, which allows us to use Vue 3. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter on this, and now it's going to ask us if we want to have a dedicated config file. I'm going to hit enter for yes, and now it's going to ask us if we want to save this preset for future Vue projects. I'm going to hit no on this, so I'm just going to type n, and now it's going to go ahead and create our project. All right, so first we want to cd into the project, so I'm going to type cd Vue tutorial, and now we can actually run this Vue project, but we're not going to do that just yet. We're going to cover what's exactly inside of the project that we just created. So I'm going to open up VS Code, and now you can see I opened up our Vue tutorial folder that we just created, and if we look at the left side here, make this a little bit bigger, we can see we have our main directory, and we have a couple subdirectories and a couple files that we have here. It might seem a little bit overwhelming, but I promise you it's really simple. The first thing we're going to look at is the node modules folder, and this is just going to contain all of our libraries and other node modules that we have installed. So you won't really have to look in here too much. This is just where we're going to store our libraries that we may install into our project. The next folder we have is our public folder. Now this is going to look familiar. It's going to hold our index.html, and this is where we're going to have our HTML that we display on the browser. And as you can see here, we have the app div with the ID of app, and this is where we're going to inject our Vue code in, similar to the way we had it set up in the previous tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And next we have our source directory on the left here. Now this is where we're going to house our components and different assets that we have. If we look at our main.js here, we can see something very similar to what we did before. We have create app, and we're mounting it to the app div that we had in our index.html. The only difference here is we're importing it a little bit differently. Right here, we're just importing the create app method from the Vue library. So instead of doing Vue.create app, we're essentially taking that create app method from the Vue library, and we're just going to use it on a different line. So just a different way of doing the exact same thing. And of course, here we're importing app from app.vue. Now this is a component, and it's actually our roots component, and I'll get into that in a second, but this is basically just a component. And of course, when we're creating app, we're just throwing that component inside the create app function, and then we're mounting it to the app div. So now let's go into app.vue. Now this is actually where our HTML content is actually going to be created, and this is how we are actually displaying our components onto our web page. And if you're familiar with Svelte, this is kind of similar in a way. We have the 3 tags here. We have our template. Here we have our script. And at the bottom here is where we have our styling. So our template is actually going to house all of our elements that we're going to be displaying on the page. Our script, this is simply where we're going to put our JavaScript. And this is where we're going to put all of our styling. And we'll get into this more. But for now, I'm going to go into our components folder, and we can see we have a hello world.vue file. And this is a component in itself. And I'll show you exactly what this is showing in a second, but it's basically got everything that we're looking at on our homepage here. And we can see if we go back to our app.vue, we're actually importing that component into our script here, and we're using it right up here in our template. Again, I'll show you what that is exactly in a second, but the last thing I want to show you is our package.json, and this is really the only file you're going to be really looking at here. Of course, if you're using GitHub, you're going to use the .gitignore. You're probably going to mess around with that. And the README file, of course, if you're using GitHub and you want to have like a README file, it's there. But you're really going to be looking at your package.json, and this is going to hold all of our dependencies and our dependencies and our scripts. So if you remember from the CLI, it said we could do npm run serve, which is this script here. And this is basically just going to allow us to view our project in the browser. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to open up the command line here, and I'm going to run npm run serve, which again, serve is the name of the script here, right here, and that is going to run this command, which is going to run our project. So let's go ahead and hit enter on this. It's saying starting development server, and now you can see compiled successfully, app running at localhost 8080. So let's go ahead and go to that in the browser. All right, so now we're looking at localhost 8080. We can see welcome to your Vue.js app. So again, everything that you're seeing right here, all of this that I have highlighted, this is our hello world component that we imported. If we go back to our app.vue, that we imported in our script and placed right inside our template here. This is what all of this HTML content here that is in our hello world.vue component, this is what all of this is. And inside our app component, we have that hello world component, but we also have that Vue logo image that you see up at the top here. Now, if I were to remove this hello world component from the template and just keep the image here, we're going to see that now we can only see the Vue logo image, because again, all of that was stored in the hello world component. We will get into that in the next video, but I just wanted to cover a little gist of how this all works. So if we go ahead and add an h1 tag here, and we say welcome to this tutorial, and we go back to our browser, we're going to see welcome to this tutorial. So now let's look at our script tag. So we have the hello world component that we had imported earlier up here. This is how we actually used it up here, but since we're no longer using this, we don't actually need to import this here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And so now we just have our default export here. Here is where we're housing the components that we're importing. So again, we had hello world imported, but now since we're no longer importing that, we can actually just get rid of hello world. And we can actually just get rid of this entire property right here because we don't have any components that we are currently importing. All right, so now we just have name. Now, like we did in the previous video, we can use the same things that we used before, such as data, and we can return in data, let's say fruit and apple, and we can actually use that once again up here. So if I type the 2 curly braces and we type fruit, we can now access this fruit data right here. And we can see that if we go to our app, we can see Apple is right below our H1 tag. So as you can see, everything works the same way it did before. It's just now we're using the Vue CLI. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. In the next video, we're going to be covering those on-click events and how we handle template refs inside of the Vue CLI. So thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.